Welcome to After Hours AM Deeper Cuts.
Cutting deep into what skews.
And welcome to this edition of After Hours AM, everybody. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me, well, I shouldn't say right along with me because I've known Willis a long time, Willis Morgan. We started talking shortly. We had Joe Matthews on the show, and everyone knows that, about 2 months ago, and we talked about it was the Adam Walsh case to great detail. But after that show, Willis got a hold of me. I'm glad he did, and he is the author of this great book, and actually he was an eyewitness. It's Frustrated Witness. And I'll tell you why. Because no one wants to listen to you, Morgan. Nobody. Willis, nobody wants to listen to you. And so, but we're changing that tonight. We're going to have Willis on for the whole 2 hours. We're also having Mia Taylor on. She was there also at the shopping mall where small 6-year-old Adam Walsh was abducted in 1981 by what everybody, or I shouldn't say everybody, but popular theory is Otis Toole did this. But boy, you guys have a whole different story. Now, why don't you go ahead and take us right from the top on what happened for each of you? Would you like me to start? Yeah, absolutely. Whoever would like to start, I am ready and willing, and want to hear this tale from beginning to end.
Right. Okay. Back in 1981, I worked for a newspaper, the Miami Herald, the largest newspaper in Florida. And my off days were Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. We worked a 40-hour week, but 4 days a week, 10-hour shifts. So Monday was my middle day off. And I decided I had nothing to do. I was going to go to the Hollywood Mall, because that was a premier mall in southern Broward County. And I was going to go to Walden's bookstores just to browse around. And then after that, I was going to the German deli, because that's mainly the reason I went there, was to go to the German deli to have lunch. So on my way down to the German deli, I decided to stop off in Radio Shack, since it was on the same side of the hallway that I was on. And it was across from the German deli. And as I was in the Radio Shack, this guy came in, and he was totally disheveled. And it was the weirdest confrontation that I ever had, because he was trying to smile at me and start a conversation with me, but that smile, he had this dead, dull look in his eyes. I mean, it was just nothing matched. I mean, this guy was dirty, disheveled. He stunk of beer, and he was trying to standing right there trying to start a conversation with me. But I never responded, because my thinking was, if you say anything, that would initiate, more conversation. And
sure.
Eventually, he just stomped out of the Radio Shack, but it was really bizarre. And when he left, because of that encounter I had, I knew somebody was going to be in trouble. But in 1981, never did I think a 6-year-old would be in trouble. And keep in mind, this was before Adam was abducted. This encounter happened.
Okay.
And this was around 12 o'clock in the afternoon. Keep in mind, Adam was abducted around 12:15 to 12:20.
Okay, so you go You go into this Radio Shack and you have a day off, and you're in there and you run into what later on you'd find out is Jeff Dahmer, and was it almost like you had just a feeling in your bones that this guy, even though he was disheveled, didn't smell like alcohol, but he gave you the vibe of being someone not to mess with?
Exactly. I mean, listen. At that time, I used to be able to bench 360. I'm 5'10", 188 pounds. I'm no slouch, but I was kind of nervous with this guy standing over me. This guy was really bizarre. And I just knew somebody was going to be in trouble. But like I said, never did I think a 6-year-old boy would be in trouble.
Yeah.
I was 34 at the time, so he was 21. And my thinking at the time was, he's going to go up to somebody and do the same thing again to them. And there might be words exchanged, a shoving match, or a fight at the most, my thinking was. So I was watching him, and I watched him actually walk into Sears and walk through Sears and into the toy department. And I stood there for a minute, wondering what he's doing in the toy department. He's not coming back out, and my thinking was, he must be playing the video games himself. And then I realized, well, when he comes back out, he's going to come my way, because this was like the toy department was in would be the northwest part of Sears. So, he would come, I'm thinking the way he came, he would come back that way, and that's where I was, and I didn't want another confrontation, so I left.
Why did you follow him, though? I mean, what was our gut instinct to follow this guy? I mean, most of us would have let him go and not pursue him at all if we were feeling that scared or that at least that uneasy.
And and when I went to the police to tell them my story, remember I went in '81 after the abduction, and then I went also back in '91 when Dahmer was captured, and that's what the police say to me. He says, "Well, what are you doing following somebody around?" But I've never in my life, I'm 71 now, I've never in my life before Adam or since Adam's abduction followed anybody. That's how strange this was. I mean, I just knew this guy was bad news and somebody was going to be in trouble. And again, this was before Adam was even abducted. I didn't know if there was an abduction. I didn't know anything. I left.
Yeah.
And even when I left back to the east parking lot, through the food court, before I stepped out of that mall, I turned around to make sure he didn't follow me back, because I did not want another confrontation with this guy out in the parking lot, especially where it was quiet and there would be nobody around. I just didn't want it. I didn't know what this guy was up to, or if he had a weapon or what.
Well, yeah, I mean,
but I went home.
Yeah, most of us would be scared. Go ahead, Willis. I didn't mean to interrupt you at all. I'm just saying most of us
would
feel that way.
As I said, listen, I was so nervous that I was looking around for the clerk in the store, and I saw he was way in the back. I almost started to walk back there where the clerk was, but then I decided not to for a number of reasons. One is I had an accident. I had a motorcycle, and I got a fight with a truck. Oh. And I lost my right leg.
Well, I'm sorry.
So I didn't want him to see me walking with a limp.
Yeah.
Plus, I didn't want to go back there, way in the back corner of the Radio Shack, because I'm thinking, that could be worse than being out the front by the hallway. Plus, I didn't want to get the clerk drawn into this.
Sure.
Encounter here.
Sure.
So I just stood my ground there, and like I said, finally he just turned around and stomped out of that Radio Shack like he was trying to punch holes through the floor. Like a little kid that somebody took their toy away from or something.
Well, why do you think he was in there then? I mean, what, to your best thoughts, what would have brought him into that Radio Shack? Was he hunting? Okay. Was he looking? What was he doing?
Well, as me can tell you, he was there. That wasn't his first time there. He was there the day before when he tried to abduct me and his brother. And then the week before, on a Monday, he was in that same toy department, and he tried to abduct a 13-year-old girl with Down syndrome, and her mother had this stare down with him, and she is positive also, Denise Smith, that it was Jeffrey Dahmer. So that was the week before, and 2 weeks before, on another Monday, July 13th, he was in the toy department, but not in that toy department. This is another Sears, the Twin City Mall in Riviera Beach, which is about 60 miles north of the Hollywood Mall, where he tried to get Terry Keaton, tried to abduct him. And all the composites from that incident matched the Hollywood Mall. There was a blue van involved. There was a 6-foot-tall man, the exact same description, everybody. And all the witnesses, after Dahmer was captured, also say, yep, that was the guy.
Well, sure. I mean, and you talk about witnesses, and we're lucky enough to have one on air with us tonight, and that's of course Mia Taylor. And Mia, well, two, yes, with you, Willis, but one independent one aside from your story was Mia as well. Mia, what happened with your encounter with Dahmer?
It was actually the Sunday before. I think it was the 26th of July was that date of 1981, and my brother and I and my mom were at the mall. And my mom had allowed my brother and I to go and watch the older kids playing video games and stuff like that. And we were supposed to, meet her. She only said, okay, 5 minutes, and then you need to come over here where I'm at. And she was standing just inside the mall entrance where Sears leads into the rest of the mall. And so my brother and I were heading out and walking down the hallway toward her. And this guy had stepped out in front of us, and it was like fixated on my brother, asking him questions about this little game. And it was like a handheld toy with a little ball that rolled around. And I had told him, because my brother was just sitting there, didn't really say anything to him. And this guy's getting close. And I was like, he don't know anything about that, and kind of like blew him up. There's Mom, and grabbed my brother, and we ran on to meet her. And when we were leaving that day, the mall, because we were meeting up with her because we had to meet my dad at a certain time. He'd actually dropped us off. And when we were leaving and went out to the parking lot, my dad pulled up to pick us up. I saw the same guy getting into a blue van. So the next day, we were back at the mall. We were dropped off. It was the middle of summer, and we didn't have air conditioning, South Florida. And so we would spend a lot of time at the mall with our mom during the summer. So my dad had dropped us off for a couple hours because he had to go over to one of the racetracks that he had made bets at the day before and cash in tickets and things like that.
Sure.
So we were, again, allowed to go and watch the older kids play because my brother didn't even know how to play video games or anything like that. He was just, standing there watching. And there were several kids back there, and we were all told to, just, where's your parents? Y'all need to go, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. And we all started walking out, and my mom at that time was, had come through what's going on. She goes, it's time to go anyway, that type of thing. So I was like, okay, we're walking out, and my brother was wanting to, he goes, but I want to talk to my little friend. I want to talk to my little friend. And this was just outside of the doors heading to the parking lot. And that's when my mom told my brother, no, his dad's here anyway. You need to just stop. Like my brother was being whiny type of thing.
Yeah.
And my mom thought that this guy with this kid was the kid's father. And, because little kid and a younger guy.
Yeah.
And so we went ahead and was standing there, and I could, see the kid was crying, and the guy took the tips of his fingers and was telling him something. And then we went ahead and left with, then my dad had pulled up and we went ahead and left. So that was 2 days in a row, and the guy was wearing the same clothes, and I, was like, that's the same guy who was here yesterday, and he didn't even change his clothes, is what went on in my mind. Mm-hmm. But from the Sunday encounter, I too, like Willis was saying, you could smell the alcohol on his breath. And to this day, I cannot stand the smell of alcohol because to me it was like more traumatic in a way that that's the first time I'd been around nasty alcohol breath.
Yeah.
Because my parents didn't drink or anything. So I was like, that was just disgusting. So, and then no one ever questioned me. This Detective Joe Matthews, in his book, he claimed that he talked to me and talked to my brother and made claims that my brother said that I identified this Otis Toole and all that. And it's like, no one's ever talked to me until Willis and them looked me up and actually somehow miraculously found me and just called me out of the blue one day and says, hey, can we send you some pictures? And they sent me some pictures. Mm-hmm. And the picture that I identified didn't look like this Jeffrey Dahmer. Okay. So that's why I'm like, who is that? And they're like, well, that's Jeffrey Dahmer. I'm like, well, that's not the picture on the news. They go, keep in mind, he was younger back then. And, I'm like, oh, wow. So once I did some research and started pulling pictures off the internet, I'm like, well, damn, that is him. Because I guess there's, the mug shots and stuff from his early years back in the late 70s and early 80s. And it looks nothing like the picture that the world saw of Jeffrey Dahmer on the news and things like that. That's why at first I was like, no way, that's not him. Yeah. And then I had to confirm with myself, yeah, that picture that I identified, that's who that was. So, and this is only in the last couple of years. So, like Joe Matthews talked about me and my brother in his book.
Yeah,
he never talked to us.
Interesting. And did you witness Dahmer actually abducting Walsh, Adam?
He had Adam by the fingertips, talking to him like a parent getting on to a child, and and he was crying. The little boy, Adam was crying, and like I said, it was drawn to my attention because my mom goes, oh, his dad's here, because my brother was wanting to go and hang out with Adam outside of the store.
Yeah, because the theory that we have heard throughout the years is, of course, there was the video game in the store. Adam Walsh's mother goes a couple aisles down, leaves him with the older boys to play the Atari 2600 at that time, and there's a tussle, and the store clerk basically said to all the kids, get out of here. And so that is when Dahmer would have had that opportunity. Am I correct?
Yes and no, because the store clerk actually was like, where's your parents? That type of thing. And so, at that time, the older kids who were actually, on Sunday, that did happen.
Okay.
But not on Monday.
Okay. Now, when this is all going down, and Willis, you saw Mia, they probably, you saw, but Willis, especially you, because right away you went to the police, did you not? Go ahead, say, hey, it's Dahmer. I mean, this is what happened. This guy was here.
You talking to me?
I am,
Joel,
sir.
I went to the police 2 days after the abduction. I didn't go right away. I only went when I went back to work, and I started telling coworkers, and they encouraged me to go. I'm not very fond of going to police departments sometimes.
Well, most of us aren't.
And there's other witnesses that didn't go right away. Just some witnesses just don't do that.
Yeah, no,
Police off to the police department. Some did, and the ones that did were brushed off. Many called the Hollywood Police Department. They got answering machines. One witness called, and he wanted to come in and make a statement. They said, well, the detective you need to speak to is on vacation. This is just 2 days, again, after Adam's abduction. They said, you need to call back in 2 weeks.
So what they do is there's a big case going down, he decides to go on vacation. The detective that you had to talk to.
Well, I don't know if he was on vacation already or what. This is Bill Bowen. When he called, this was his statement.
Okay.
That's what he was told. Bill Bowen is the witness that saw Adam being tossed into the blue van like, quote-unquote, a sack of potatoes.
Why now?
In the parking lot.
Why has, even back then and even today, why do they like Otis Toole for this? Why do they like him so well?
They don't. It's only Joe Matthews. Only Joe Matthews. All the original detectives, I even talked to one of them, they all dismissed Otis Toole as a suspect. Now, the police chief, when he closed the Adam Walsh case, in the closing, if you listen to that tape, he says, detective past and present all believe it was Otis Toole. That's not true at all. The detective I talked to, who was Ron Hickman, he was the second lead detective, and he told me when I talked to him, I said, are you aware that the chief, when he closed the case, said detectives past and present believe it was Otis Toole? He goes, well, they know I don't.
Interesting.
None of them do. And I have all their statements from the records stating that they don't.
So
even the lead detective, Hoffman.
And so Otis Toole is not our guy. I mean, no way did Otis Toole, in your opinion, and in their opinion, do this crime, except for the opinion of one person, and that's, of course, Joe Matthews. And again, just to be completely above board, we did have him on the show, and he wrote the book Bringing Adam Home, and he plainly, and that's the book where he claims that he talked to you, Mia, was in that book, and I do remember reading that. And then, because when Willis brought up your name to me, right away I thought, wait a minute, that's in Joe's book. And then, of course, you... That's
how I found Mia.
Okay.
From Joe's book.
Okay.
I didn't know Joe. Joe is in the case files. But I didn't know Joe had a sister until I read Joe Matthews' book. That came out in 2011. So I was on the hunt for Mia. And believe me, I've been everywhere looking for Mia. And Joel.
Yeah.
And I never could find Joel. Yeah. And then I found Mia, and I found out Joel passed away.
Well, let's talk about your brother, and that very well could have been your brother could have been taken instead of Adam had things turned out differently. Yeah. I mean, we could have been talking about your brother.
My brother had a lot of survivor's guilt over that because he felt like maybe it should have been him, and he actually ended up committing suicide over it in 2006.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, Mia. I am so sorry to hear that. And it's just too bad that tormented your brother the way it did, to that point. That's horrible.
It really did torment him.
So in a roundabout way, he claimed 2 lives, not 1, in that whole situation.
Absolutely.
So again,
and you can also say, Joe, that had he been successful with Mia's brother, we wouldn't be doing the show about Adam Walsh. This would be about Mia's brother.
Yeah, it would be, and equally terrible. Equally terrible. This poor child was 6 years old, gets abducted by a shopping mall, and eyewitnesses placed the blue van and what later on is identified as Jeff Dahmer on scene. Court documents have Dahmer, and we will flesh out who Dahmer was here in a little bit, because Joe, I know you have a lot of knowledge on who Dahmer truly was that maybe we don't even know about, because there's a lot of crimes that even you've talked about that I've never even heard of that Dahmer was convicted of. For instance, the earlier ones, and he was in the Army. So after the Army, let's talk about Dahmer and how he got to Florida. Take us to the progression of arrival.
Okay, well, in 1979, he went to Germany, Frankfurt, Germany, and he did in-processing in Frankfurt. And that's where he was sent to Baumholder. So he spent 2 years in Baumholder. But he was constantly drinking and insubordination reprimands, and eventually in 1981, March. So they gave him a voucher. When you get out of the Army, you get a voucher. You can go anywhere in the U.S. with that voucher. You trade it in for a plane ticket at the airport. And so he decided to come to Miami. And in the meantime, the Army sent his belongings in a trunk back home to Bath, Ohio. And so his father knew that he wasn't in the Army anymore, but he had no idea where his son could have gone. But he was in Miami. He March 26th, he landed at the Miami airport and worked his way over to Miami Beach. And I calculated from his DD-214 form that he would have had approximately $800 and something, $850 around there in his pocket, cash. And he ran out of money eventually, and so he started dumpster diving for food. And the manager in a strip mall happened to be taking the garbage out, and he saw this guy eating out of the dumpster, and so he offered him a sandwich. And Dahmer ate that sandwich. A couple of days later, he went out to the dumpster. Dahmer was out there eating out of his dumpster again. So that's when he asked Dahmer if he needed a job, and he hired him as a busboy. Now, everything Dahmer says is in complete conflict to what the manager of Sunshine Subs, where Dahmer was working, says in the record when they interviewed Dahmer. Because Dahmer said that he was working so many hours when they asked him about the Adam Walsh case that he would have never had time to do anything or go anywhere. He was working 7 days a week, you know? But the manager says that's just not so. Dahmer was working only regular weekdays, Monday through Friday. He didn't work on weekends, and even the days he was working, he was constantly getting sent home. So usually on Mondays, he was getting sent home. And my theory is that Ken, the manager, Ken Halbert, he said that he was paying Dahmer under the table in cash, minimum wage, and he would pay him on Friday. So my thinking was that Dahmer drank up his money on the weekend and would come to work, because this is what Ken said. He would come to work on Monday so disheveled he would have to send him home. But then he would come in Tuesday, and he would be in a little bit better shape and get through the week. Yeah. So that's why all these attempted abductions, like Adam and the Twin City Mall, South Beach, Deerfield Beach, Plantation, they're always on Mondays. That's why I do a chapter called Manic Mondays.
Okay. That's very interesting you say that, because I did read that chapter. And and that's exactly when, if you trace it back and you look at other cases, Monday seems to be that magic day when everything was going on. And that makes sense that that's what happened, because Dahmer had free time. Now, the blue van, how did Dahmer ever get possession of this infamous blue van?
Well, there were two stores. They were owned by Mike Pelletier. And he had a pizza store called Mr. Pizza. And then he also owned a sub shop. He had Ken Halbert managing the sub shop for him. And the van was at the pizza place. They had one blue van and two white pickup trucks. Now, for pizza deliveries, they usually used the two white pickup trucks because they were better on gas. But in the wintertime, when it was busy, they used all three vehicles for deliveries. But this was summertime, so they didn't really use the blue van that much. They just used it like a couple times a week to pick up supplies for the two stores.
Gotcha.
And that was it.
And that was
just sit there.
Was that Dahmer's job? Was to pick up these supplies?
No. But all the employees would take the blue van. Apparently, Mike never really kept close eye on that blue van.
Okay.
There's employees that said they use it to go to Fort Lauderdale, Orlando, move furniture with the blue van.
Kind of a community vehicle is what it was.
It seems like, yeah. And apparently Dahmer was taking it as well.
Yeah, it sounds like it, because Mia, that's the van you saw.
Well, listen, Joe, that blue van has been seen at every site relevant to Adam Walsh's abduction. At the Turnpike, where Adam's severed head was found, where Dahmer is, and the Hollywood Mall, and other locations. But at the Turnpike, Adam's severed head was found August 10th, okay? August 11th, witnesses started calling in, from the Turnpike. 4 witnesses called the Hollywood Police Department. One witness his name is Dennis Bob. He was a Publix truck driver. That's a supermarket chain down here in South Florida, big chain in all of Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, he was driving a public truck back up north to pick up a loaded truck with supplies and bring it back down to South Florida. That's did. And as he was passing that mile marker, he saw, this is his statement now, he saw a van in the head of the turnpike, and he saw a man, down by the canal on a little footbridge with a bucket, and he took something round out of the bucket and threw it into the water. This is at 12:30 in the morning on Friday, August 7th. So that would have been 3 days before the severed head was found. Mm-hmm. And I called Wright, who was the medical examiner. He said that timing would have been perfect. Keep in mind, they had ones in the water. They've done everything to determine how long it could have been there.
Yeah, I was going to
They
say.
even put a pig's head in the water to see what kind of decomposition there would be.
Yeah, and not been able to pin down an exact time, have they? How long it was in the water?
Yeah, but when I called and I told him about that time frame, he said that's the perfect time frame.
Okay.
But anyway, when Dennis called the Hollywood Police Department, this is what they told him. This is his quote, okay? Yeah, we already know about the blue van. It has nothing to do with the Adam Walsh case.
That's the now.
That was it.
It doesn't sound like Mia and Willis. It doesn't sound like they did their due diligence to anybody here. It sounds like it was a very botched case from the beginning.
Right, and Matthews admits that it was a botched case, but the only thing Matthews does is he doesn't admit he's one of them. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, he points the finger at and lambasts the lead detective Hoffman, as he was doing even on your show, and
Yes.
he doesn't realize that, it's kind of like the kettle calling the pot black.
It really is. You're absolutely correct. Now, Mia, they never contacted you, law enforcement, did they, at all, for what you saw then?
No. I've never spoken to anyone about it except Willis and a couple of other people.
Yeah.
But never law enforcement.
That kind of surprised me, with so many people coming forward going, hey, we saw this blue van, we saw some strange goings-ons, and it was more than just you, Mia, and it's more than just you, Willis. There was a lot of people that saw this going down, and
Right.
and the police just kind of go, it's not the guy we like for it.
I'm the one that caused that, though. You have to understand, I'm the one that caused that problem. Listen, do you remember that incident I told you about the Riviera Beach Twin City Mall?
Yeah, but why don't you tell our
2
listeners?
minutes ago. Anyway, listen, that was on 2 weeks before Adam was abducted, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, Otis Toole was in Newport News, Virginia, in a hospital at that time. He didn't arrive in until a day and a half before Adam was abducted in Jacksonville, over 300 miles away.
Yes.
Okay? He didn't even have a car at that time. According to Betty Goodyear, who owned the boarding house where he was living, she said he would get picked up for work by somebody named John. And he didn't have a car at that time. So, I mean, that whole story is made up, And the witnesses all have composites that back up what their statements say. And those composites are a spitting image. If you went to my website and looked at them...
I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking at those composites right now, and they are very... I mean, you look at Dahmer, and then you look at the composite... very, very close. Very close.
Right. Especially when you consider what a composite is. A composite is a witness after the fact, sometimes a month after, trying to come up with a description to a composite artist that never seen the suspect who has to draw the composite.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. It's the best of your knowledge and best of your recollection of what it looked like. And Dahmer doesn't look like the kind of guy that you'd forget seeing. Just he's that kind of striking figure, and he strikes fear in everyone's heart from all the people that didn't know him.
Absolutely. Everybody says the same thing.
Yep.
Everybody. And let me tell you something about that blue van. In Joe Matthews' book, you said you read it, on page 26, this is what Joe Matthews says about the blue van, okay? I'm going to paraphrase. All those blue van sightings, to me, are about as consequential as the sightings of the Loch Ness Monster. And then he goes on to talk about how all the lead detective did was put everybody out of their way because police were annoying everybody. Everybody that had a blue van couldn't even get to work without being stopped. I mean, if you had a blue van and you made a U-turn, the cops considered you were trying to get away, and they pull you over and give you extra scrutiny. If you had a blue van and you tried to sell it, they would consider you trying to get rid of evidence.
But there should have been evidence.
They would really get down on you.
But there should have been evidence in the blue van, though. I mean, you can't commit murder and cut someone's head off and not have blood in the van.
Well, he didn't commit the murder in the van. He committed the murder because I believe I found the crime scene where Adam was murdered. If you look at the cover of my book, that meter room, that's the room where Adam was murdered. There's blood spatter on a back wall. And it was a dead man that told me where Adam was murdered. I know when I say that a lot of times people think you're like a little off because, obviously most people think dead man can't talk.
Yeah.
But sometimes they do through letters and police reports. This was a police report. Ken Halbert, the manager of the Sunshine Sub Shop, told me that 10 days after Dahmer was hired, that he found a dead man. Okay, now, the police report says July 7th on it. So if it was you subtract 10 days before that would be June 27th. Adam was abducted July 27th, exactly 1 month. So
yeah, I'm looking at these dates in your book, and then I'm also looking at the, I cannot get over the composite sketch, how they could not put these two together, and especially Mia, you pointing out Dahmer later on. I mean, that really should have been the, so to speak, the coffin nail in this case.
And if you're looking at those composites, it doesn't look anything like the picture everyone saw on the news of Dahmer, does it? He was heavier and, more shaggy hair and disheveled looking than the pictures everyone saw on the news, in the 90s when he was arrested. Yeah. That's why when they told me who I had identified, I'm like, what? But I want to go back to those composites also. You have, I don't know if you've got a picture there that you can pull up of Otis Toole. I do. Joe Matthews misquoted a conversation that I had with my brother when my brother was going, because on America's Most Wanted, they had put this picture of Toole up there, and I'm like, that's not him. The dude had way more hair. There's no way that's him. Well, this Joe Matthews took that statement and said that I had identified Otis Toole, and I'm like, no, I didn't. The composite looks nothing like Otis Toole. Nothing like him.
Well, I'm looking at the composite right now, and I'm looking at Otis Toole. You're absolutely correct. There's nothing identifying him as Otis Toole. I'm looking at a period picture of Otis Toole's mugshot from 1983, which is only a couple years after the abduction. He has a severely receding hairline, and of course that would have stuck out, and the larger forehead, which really would have resonated in my memory. I would have said the guy is half bald, and and has a very large forehead. That would have been a distinguishing feature in my mind.
Right, and another big distinguishing feature is the age. Otis Toole was in his mid-30s at the time. Dahmer was 21. Everybody says the suspect was about 20 years old. The oldest anybody that said, any witness, is 25.
Well, generally speaking...
So the age range for Dahmer is between 20 and 25 by all the witnesses.
Generally speaking, the older you are, the harder it is, from what I understand, with other shows that we've done, the harder it is to get close to these children like that. Because they're more apt to really trust someone younger than older a lot of times. Am I correct, or am I way off base on that one?
That I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know. I'm not familiar with all the other cases. I don't, like you're doing.
Oh yeah.
I would have to agree.
Yeah.
I would have to agree with you because, even the way when he stepped out in the hallway, and fixating on my brother, asking him these questions about that game, he, was trying to be all cheerful and things like that, but you can just tell he was off.
Yeah.
And that's why I pulled my brother away. I was like, oh, no.
Well,
But I guess, other kids would have been like, oh, yeah, this is the fun person. No.
Yeah. And your mom and dad, and your mom, especially because your dad wasn't on scene, just kind of assumed it was either the father or a big brother.
Yeah. Yeah, she'd said that his dad is here, so I'm assuming that she thought it was the dad.
Yeah.
And other witnesses... Philip Law thought it was an older... Philip Law thought it was his stepfather, because Adam was screaming, "You're not my daddy, you're not my daddy," as Dahmer dragged him across the threshold, garden center exit.
Mm-hmm.
And another witness, Bill Bowen, in the parking lot, when he saw Adam being tossed into a blue van, Adam kept screaming, "I don't want to go, Adam, I don't want to go." So Bill, at first, thought it was a rambunctious kid that didn't want to leave the toy department, and that was an older brother. But here's the problem. This is one of the reasons I wrote my book and I do what I do, because had I gone further into the toy department, Mia's mother had reason to think that could have been a father,
Sure.
and Philip Law, an older brother, and a stepfather. They had reason. They didn't know. I had this encounter that made me follow him and watch him all the way to the toy department. I would have known better. And Philip Law told me one of the reasons he didn't go to the police right away because he felt so bad. He felt like he should have been the one that intervened and done something. Because Philip was going into the Sears, and he turned around and started walking backwards as he's watching this guy drag this kid out of the store. And he knew something wasn't right, but he didn't intervene right away, thinking that was a stepfather. So he went to the service counter to pay his bill, and then he started having second thoughts, ran back outside. The guy, the blue van, and the kid were all gone.
Willis,
So,
is this
I
why
would have known better.
Is this why you're so passionate? Because I know there's listeners right now going, "Well, what's the big deal, Willis? You know, it's a long time ago, and you know, we get a lot of that too, and other shows that we do. It's like, it was a long time ago, and why are you pushing so hard to get this changed around? So what if Otis Toole was pinned with it? So what if Dahmer got away with it? They're both dead. They both did their time for other things.
But there's a lot of people that aren't dead, and they need to have justice too. You know, these cops, what they do is they go after the homeless, the helpless, the weak, the downtrodden, who have no education, no money, no family to come to their aid, and they pin murders on them. Frank Lee Smith spent 14 years on death row in Florida, and he died of pancreatic cancer. And only after he died did they find out with DNA that he was innocent, and they caught the real guy. I mean, you go on and on. Jerry Townsend spent 25 years in prison. And Kelly Hancock, John Walsh's attorney, who's also the same attorney that at the closing sat right next to Joe Matthews, and they shower them with credit, both Joe and Kelly Hancock, when Kelly Hancock is the one that put Jerry Townsend in prison for 25 years. These cops, what they do is they hide evidence that would have exonerated Jerry, and other cases too. It's not just those two. I mean, this is going on and on. We can't. Somebody's got to do something to get them to do their jobs correctly.
Yeah, there has to be.
Unfortunately, in the Adam Walsh case, Otis Toole was already dead.
Yeah.
When these cops, decided to pin Adam's murder on him.
Yeah, that's something I was going to bring up as well. But another point I want to bring up is, Mia, with your mother seeing this and you seeing this, did your mother ever say anything to you like, "Wow, we should have done something," or "We should have said something," or was she just let it go years later after it happened?
It was a long time before we even knew about it because we didn't have a television. We lived out in the East Everglades. So we didn't even know Adam had been abducted for a significant amount of time. I mean, it was probably 2 weeks, maybe longer. I'm not really sure. But years later, when I tried to talk to my mom about it, she was like, "Yeah, well, you just need to forget about that and just be glad it wasn't your brother," or something like that. And I just left it.
Yeah.
My brother and I had a couple of conversations when they were first saying that it was Otis Toole. And, even he was like, "No, that's definitely not him." So,
well, and back in '81 though, we didn't intervene like we do today. Like if we saw that today, most of us would be all over that. If we saw someone, a small child, screaming, yelling, fighting that way, at least we would, at the very least, give it a closer look. And if we really felt like it, most of us would stop and say something. At least I'd hope we would anyway.
Absolutely. Even in the 90s, in the early 90s, after I became a mother and my daughter was, like 2-3 years old, my dad would take her, to the toy store or whatever, Toys R Us.
Sure.
And she would want something that he was like, "No, I'll get you this, but not that. That's like $500. And she would pitch a fit. There were people who actually called the police on him, and he was questioned, and they called me, "Yes, he's supposed to have my daughter," because they thought he was abducting her.
Yeah, Yeah, that's...
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, because now we live in a more educated culture of what can happen. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case for Adam. That was not the culture he was in. It was more of the mind your own business kind of mentality back then.
Yeah. I agree with that.
And it's kind of sad. It really is. That, I mean, because poor Adam, what he went through, and we will get into that in the next hour, what he went through, but it is absolutely just a horrific set of circumstances. But then I couldn't imagine now, both you and Willis, seeing this and being there. And you, Willis, first I'm going to ask you, do you ever feel guilty? I mean, that'd be the question that was kind of popping up here in the chat on Facebook is, do you ever feel guilty that you couldn't do anything, rather? Do you ever have that a little bit of guilt in the back of your head?
Right. And that's one of the reasons my book is titled Frustrated Witness. Now, I've always said that, had I gone down there, I would have done something, But
yeah.
I didn't, and I always felt bad about that because I felt like I'm the one that should have been able to do something, But then I tell myself, if it wasn't Adam, it would have been someone else. Somebody was going to have a bad day.
Yeah, it sounds like he was locked into predatory behavior, and somebody
Absolutely.
was going to get abducted.
And let me say something also about Mia, the photo she recognized. When Dahmer was fired from Sunshine Subs in late September, he went back to Ohio. His parents sent him a one-way Pan Am plane ticket,
Sure.
and he landed in Bath, Ohio. Okay. 2 weeks after he was there, he was arrested on October 7th, 1981. And that photo is the most similar photo to what he looked like in Florida because he still had his Florida tan and the long hair. So if you ever get a chance, look at that photo, the one that says October 7th arrest of Jeffrey Dahmer. And you'll see how different that is in the photos when he was captured in 1991.
Well, yeah, exactly. The photos, and we're coming back to that, and now Matthew has now claimed that Mia, like you said earlier, you saw Tool doing this, and that is not true. Just for the record, you did not see Ottis Toole. Am I correct?
I did not see Ottis Toole.
And so it makes a guy like me scratch my head, go, well, how the heck did they just not even look at Dahmer at that point? Because, see, Dahmer was already on the radar. Am I correct, Willis?
Oh, listen, Jeffrey Dahmer's father, Lionel, called John Walsh and said he thinks his son murdered Adam.
Mm-hmm.
And John called the Hollywood Police Department, asked them to go up and visit him. It took the lead detective 13 months to get up there, only after constant prodding by John Walsh and FBI agents to get the lead detective to go up there and interview Dahmer. And John Walsh got the state attorney's office to write a letter saying Dahmer would not receive capital punishment. All they wanted was to know if he killed Adam, and John gave that letter to the lead detective, Jack Hoffman. Jack Hoffman never even offered that concession on the death penalty to Dahmer when he went up there to interview him. Because he did not want Dahmer to admit to it, because that would only make him look so bad, because he's the detective that kept dismissing everything. He dismissed the blue van, but he didn't tell anybody that blue van was eliminated because he wanted to keep everybody off his back and busy while he solved the case going after James Campbell, John Walsh's house guest.
Exactly, and we're going to get into the inner workings, of course, the Walsh family, as we continue here. And that's a strange set of circumstances anyway. What was going on in that household that nobody really knew about at the time, but later on throughout the years now, they have talked more about the family itself and, of course, why they thought it would have been, well, basically her lover that killed him. Yeah. But,
Can I say something real quick?
Absolutely.
I don't know if you're going on break pretty soon or something. I want to get this out before you go. Listen, in 1991, when Dahmer was captured, I worked at a newspaper, the Miami Herald, and I saw this mugshot of this guy that committed these horrific crimes up in Milwaukee, and I started freaking out. I said, this is the guy, out loud, this is the guy I saw in the mall. I didn't even know he was in Florida. I didn't know who this guy was. But, right then they had his name in the paper, Jeffrey Dahmer. So now I knew who the guy was. It was Jeffrey Dahmer. So I called the library up. It's not really a library, it's a storage room, because back then they didn't have computers, so they stored hard copies of every paper. And they would do hand research. If you wanted an article, they'd have to go in by hand. So it wasn't like today. They could do computer searches. They would have to have a pretty close date of an article that you're looking for. And I had a date, 1981, July 27th. So I called them and I said, listen, do you remember the composite of the abduction of Adam Walsh? Can you send me a copy of that composite? And I took that mugshot and that composite back to the Hollywood Police Department, and their jaws dropped. Because they knew something I didn't know at the time. I had the wrong composite. I had the one from the Twin City Mall that they dismissed as being related to the Adam Walsh abduction. You know why?
Why?
The composites didn't fit James Campbell. This is the quote from the lead detective. It's in the newspapers. I have the articles.
Yeah.
And so they dismissed it, even though they matched other attempted abductions like the Hollywood Mall. Instead of dismissing James Campbell, they dismissed all the witnesses from every single five of them, attempted abduction and abduction of Adam Walsh. Dismissing everything. So when I went in there with that composite, that's when they went into full cover-up mode. There's an old saying, when you mess up, never fess up.
So really what you're saying is they wanted this guy to fit their profile no matter what. No matter what Mia had to say, no matter what you had to say, they had a profile and they had a suspect and they wanted to go with it no matter what the evidence was saying.
Well, it's not they. It's Detective Matthews.
Okay, so it didn't matter how
dismissed
strong
by all the other detectives after about 4 months.
Yeah, because Matthews now was brought in, as he said in our show, as a polygraph expert.
Yeah, exactly. He was there to polygraph John Walsh and James Campbell. And this is what happened. He exonerated John Walsh and James Campbell after 3 polygraphs with James Campbell. Okay, there was a lot of conflict over that because the lead detective didn't want James Campbell exonerated. But anyway, so this detective exonerated him. Then in 1987, February 8th, I believe it was, John Walsh became host of America's Most Wanted.
Yep.
The lead detective that you had on your show, Joe Matthews, heard about John getting the show, becoming host of the show. So he called John and befriended John, and of course he reminded John he's the detective that exonerated him. So John Walsh felt some gratitude, and he hired this detective as, this is what a lot of people don't realize, he hired this detective, Joe Matthews, as the senior lead investigator on America's Most Wanted. So now John Walsh had one of these bumbling, stumbling, idiot detectives right in his midst, feeding him false information about Adam's abduction all these years. And that's why John wrote his book, Tears of Rage, because of the rage of the way the Hollywood Police Department was conducting the investigation over his son. But listen, Joe, you know about the Stockholm Syndrome?
I do.
Where a victim comes to can come to sympathize with the victimizer.
Yes.
This is what's going on. John Walsh considers Joe Matthews to be his best friend and colleague, quote unquote.
Yeah, you're right, though. He was, of course, the lead detective for America's Most Wanted after this is all said and done. And a lot of it, I would have to agree with you, is because he's the guy that, well, quote unquote, broke the case. And John felt probably some allegiance to him. And he gave him that position on the show.
Right, but he didn't break the case at that time.
No.
He just only exonerated John Walsh.
Because, whenever there's a murder,
that was years later that he was hired to reinvestigate,
The thing of it is whenever there's a murder, it's been standard practice from what I understand is you eliminate the family first. Because usually, if there's a murder...
They had good reason to make James Campbell their suspect. There's no question. But when you have so many other incidents that match... after a while, you got to dismiss James Campbell, not all the witnesses from 5 different locations. Never mind, I'm not even talking about the Turnpike.
Yeah.
Those witnesses.
Yeah, there's a whole another batch of witnesses that saw Dahmer or whoever, which Dahmer, I guess, for the sake of argument, disposing of something round out of a bucket.
Right. How do you dismiss something like that on 3 days prior to the severed head being found?
You don't.
Listen, it wasn't one witness. Dennis Bubb, who drove that truck for Publix, didn't have a cell phone back then, but they had CB radios. He called on a CB radio to another truck that was like a few minutes behind him and said, hey, check out this blue van. Okay? This was Clifton Ramey. And he also saw a man standing with a bucket at the side of the blue van, and he could see him because the dome light was on, and the sliding side door was open, and the guy was fumbling with a bucket at the side of the van. So, in other words, he must have saw him after he came back from the canal.
He must have, and you're right. There were witnesses that saw someone, and Dahmer, again, for the sake of argument of this, dumping out what could only be presumed as Adam Walsh's head into that to the canal. And then they found
I don't think it was a basketball or anything.
No, I don't think it was a basketball. I'm with you there. I don't think it said Wilson anywhere on it. And unfortunately, it turned out to be Adam's head. Now, Dahmer abducts him. Mia, you see the struggle going into the van. He takes off. He has Adam in tow. What happens after that? I mean, does the media go nuts? I mean, how long did it take before they realized that he was gone? Adam.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Okay, let me talk about that security guard that Joe Matthews uses as his scapegoat. And even on your show, he said Adam was abducted from the parking lot. The security guard kicked him out with Joel, the other white boy. Okay?
Yep.
Let me tell you something. Adam was already gone 20 minutes before that security guard showed up. Okay? And this is Walsh's own statement. Okay? In the case files, as well as in Tears of Rage. Okay? She said she left Adam in the toy department with other kids to play a video. She went to the lamp department to buy a lamp that was on sale. When she went back to the toy department to collect Adam, he wasn't there. But all the other kids were still there, and she started asking them if they saw Adam. And none of them, they were too busy playing the video game, so they were ignoring her. But finally, this one Spanish kid just pointed to the garden center west exit. Reve says she thought the Spanish kid didn't understand her because he didn't speak English, or he was just trying to be polite to an adult. So she dismissed what he said, pointing to the garden center exit. So she ran outside into the regular hallway of the mall, running up and down looking for Adam in the hallway. Finally, she ran back to the toy department. Guess what? All the kids were gone, according to Reve. So what does this tell you? The kids were kicked out at the time while she was out in the hallway.
Yeah, that's exactly what it says. Now, Willis, were you there when the police arrived on scene?
Excuse me?
Were you on
How long
scene?
did it take?
Yeah, no. Were you on scene when the police arrived to investigate this abduction?
No, keep in mind, I turned around and left. I didn't know until about 10 or 11. I don't remember if it was the 10 o'clock news or the 11 o'clock p.m. news. I was in the kitchen making a sandwich. I had the TV on in the living room. And all of a sudden, on the news, I hear Hollywood Mall. I go, oh, what? And then I hear toy department. Then I hear abduction. And then I hear around 12:30. I said, oh, my God, that guy did it. He actually did it.
Yeah, that's the guy that I saw. That I'm going to put words in your mouth here for a second. That's the guy that I saw wander that way, and he was the only one that would look like he could do something like that. In the back of your mind, I'm sure of it.
Oh, there's no question it was that guy. I didn't know who that guy was. I had no clue who this guy was, but there was no question in my mind that it was him. I mean, this guy was so bizarre.
Yeah, that's what Mia says as well.
How do you get the gut feeling? I don't know if you ever had that gut feeling.
Oh, yes. I
have. This guy's bad news?
I have. I have had that gut feeling when I've run into some bad characters. And like you, like I did the same thing you did. I put some space between me and them. But then you were braver than a lot of people would have been. You followed him to some extent. And
I kept my distance.
Yeah, but you actually pursued.
Yeah, I did follow him.
You followed him, and a lot of people wouldn't have done that.
That's very true. You're absolutely right. I admit that. Sometimes I regret that I was there and had to go through all this crap that they put me through. But then sometimes I think I'm glad I was there.
Yeah.
Because at least somebody's going to be able to do something, and I'll be that one. If I have to be the one, I'll be it.
Yeah. Makes sense. We got to run a break here. When we come back, we're going to be talking more with Mia, more with Willis. Don't go anywhere. We're talking more about the Adam Walsh case. Very, very interesting stuff. Don't go anywhere. Be right back right after this. And welcome back to everyone, back to After Hours AM, and I'm your host, Joel Sturgis, and we are talking tonight with Willis Morgan. We also have Mia Taylor on the horn with us. Now, Willis, he wrote the newest book, or should be the definitive book in a lot of ways, I believe anyway, A Frustrated Witness, what he witnessed that day at that shopping mall just before Adam Walsh was abducted. And who did he witness here? If you're just tuning in, this is a shocking one. He witnessed, and so did Mia, Jeff Dahmer, of all people, at that shopping mall, which is really a game changer because most of us, if you dig into the case file, they point Otis Toole as the guy that did everything, which we all are kind of finding out together that is not the truth. Now, welcome back, guys. Willis, Mia, we kind of left off. You guys saw Dahmer. Mia, you saw him actually take Adam. You and Willis, you saw Dahmer there, both of you placing him there. Okay, after a little while, Willis, you go to the cops. So what do they tell you, Willis, when you show up?
I walked out of that police station literally shaking my head because when I went in there, I went up to the front window. There's this really thick bulletproof glass window that they stand behind. And I was trying to tell the girl behind the window that I was at the Hollywood Mall, and I was there about the Adam Walsh case. And she told me, she says, well, we have a special desk just set up for that case. And she pointed in toward the lobby by the elevators. There was a desk. There was a police officer in uniform, black uniform, sitting at the desk. So I went over to talk to him. And this guy was like the most arrogant cop you could want to meet. Condescending. He didn't want to listen to anything I said. He did take some notes, and he asked me some questions that seemed to be off a prepared list of questions that he was asking me. And all he wanted to know was, did I get a tag number? And I told him, this didn't happen outside. It was inside the mall, this incident. Yeah. And he says, well, do you have a receipt to prove you were there? And I said, I didn't buy anything. I left.
Okay,
now. Says, okay, well, if we need you, we'll call you. He took my name, phone number. They never called me. A few days later, I started seeing composites coming out, and some of those composites are the ones that you're looking at. Mm-hmm. And I realized at least they got the composite. What else can I do? And I let it go.
Okay, Willis, in 1981, even 81, they had surveillance cameras. They had video cameras for businesses back in those days.
No,
why would they didn't have one in that Radio Shack?
No.
A Radio Shack of all things didn't have
that I know of.
Really? Okay, because a lot of times these kind of places have video cameras, especially now, but I thought they did back in the 80s.
That I know of.
Okay, interesting, because that would have made things a whole lot easier had they had a video system then.
Sure. And I think about what I could have done better had that cop that I spoke to would have listened to me, because he might have left fingerprints in the Radio Shack. Because, he had to touch things.
Yeah. That is true.
I mean, the door that he came in, I saw him come in from the north door. And sure enough, I told the police, when I went back to them in 91, I says, all you have to do is check with the other witnesses. He came in that north door. His van had to be parked right outside that north door, because when you go to a mall, where do you park? You park by the door you go in, right?
Yes.
You don't park in one door and walk all the way around to the other side of the mall.
Very true.
Especially on a quiet day where there's plenty of parking.
Very true.
Sure enough, I find out other witnesses said that's exactly where he parked. The Pottenbergs and Bill Bowen that saw him speeding around the corner. The Pottenbergs, he almost ran them over. He was speeding so wildly.
Dahmer did. Almost ran them over.
Yeah, exactly. When he was retrieving the van, what happened was after Dahmer was talking to Adam, and this might have been before Mia saw him walk with Joe, he ran out the north entrance or exit, and he ran and retrieved the blue van, drove the blue van wildly towards the west side garden entrance, and stopped in the fire lane and left his vehicle right there in the fire lane, and then he ran inside and snatched Adam.
Wow, that didn't seem strange to anybody. I mean, that would have, even back in 81, that would have seemed kind of strange.
Oh, it did. It did, but like I said, Mia's mother thought it was his dad.
Yeah, again, you're absolutely correct. That's a lot of people would have thought that, and he would have been about the right age to be a young father.
Thought it was a stepfather.
Sure, I could see where that could be.
He actually saw Dahmer, and Philip Law, what happened was, he was going to the mall, and he went to pay a bill at the service counter. They have the service counter right outside the toy department, and it's the catalog department as well if you need a catalog. And Dahmer parked his vehicle, and Philip Law lost his parking space because it was blocking the traffic. You know, you have a northbound and southbound, and it was blocking the southbound lane, and so cars were having to go around this blue van, and he lost his parking space. Another car zipped into it, so he had to park in another space. And then when he went into Sears, he had to walk around the blue van that was the cause of his problem. And so he remembers the blue van, and then as he walked in, that's when he passed this guy holding this kid in a way that he said that he would never hold his kid. See, he had a son that was the same age as Adam was. So he's thinking to himself that I would never, carry my son like that, or, and the kid was screaming, "You're not my daddy, you're not my daddy, I don't want to go, I don't want to go."
Well,
as he's carrying him out.
So he gets
then he hesitated.
This is now he hesitated, of course, Dahmer did. And probably looked around.
Philip hesitated. He thought maybe he should intervene, but he didn't. He hesitated, went to the service desk, then had second thoughts and ran back out, but it was too late, unfortunately.
Well, okay, now this is what we would be believing if Otis Toole did this, and they do claim that Otis, he beheaded Adam, burned his body, and then threw his head into the canal. And ate him, yes. He claimed that he also ate that, or they claimed he ate them. That is disgusting because they were never able to retrieve a body for Adam. That is something that has not been found.
And let me tell you something. Otis Toole never murdered anybody that's been proven. The only murder that he's known for was more likely an arson accident of a 64-year-old man who died in a building that he had burnt down. Matthews is correct about one thing. He was a pyromaniac.
Yeah, he was convicted of arson and first-degree murder, or charged for first-degree murder.
He was sentenced to death over that.
Yes,
but then later that was overturned.
Yes, because it wasn't a deathbed confession. But see, now here's where it gets funny or really tricky. Is Otis he claims multiple times that he did it, but then he'd take it right back, that he'd recant.
Well, listen, and he did. And Otis isn't the only one, though. There were others, many. The only problem is they were able to pin down everybody's location, and they should have been able to pin down Otis Toole's location too.
Yeah.
That incident at the Kmart that Matthews was talking about, that never happened. Well, Otis Toole wasn't even in the state of Florida at that time.
It's funny. It's funny though that after we had Matthews on, a gentleman spoke up. I'm not going to release his name, claiming he is Adam Walsh.
Yeah, that's such nonsense. It's pathetic. I know who you're talking about. I call him the Prozac kid.
Yeah. He popped up and he claimed that he was Adam Walsh, and that he was. There's
a lot of wackos out there. I get those calls myself.
So I was going to say, I wonder if you've heard from this individual claiming he's abducted by Dahmer, and then Otis and Dahmer were with him.
Yeah, it's not even worth wasting your show on that.
Yeah, I won't go any further with it, but that's something that I'm sure that both you and me have heard. So many people wanting to be a part of it.
We know the guy that propagated that stupid rumor too. Yeah,
and that's
he lives right down the street from me.
And that's really horrible.
About 10 miles.
That's very horrible because what it does is it cheapens Adam's memory. Is what it does.
Well, no, it does way worse than that. Yeah, it does that too. But also, when real witnesses like me and myself and others come forward, nobody wants to listen to us because this guy that you're just talking about, he wrote a letter to John Walsh telling John Walsh that he'd like him to meet his son. He's alive and well.
Yes. Yes.
How do you expect John to want to listen to anybody after stuff like that?
Well, now, Willis, if John Walsh reached out to you tomorrow and said, hey, you know what, can we just leave sleeping dogs lie, would you?
Do you know how many people have asked me that question? Why is it every host asks me that question?
I have no idea. I guess
it's a good question. That's why you ask it. It is a good question. But, I've thought about that, and I wouldn't. I'll be honest with you, I just wouldn't. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This is, again, more than just Adam. There's all these people that spend years and years and decades in prison because these cops pin murders on them. What about them?
Well, are you trying to say that Otis Toole was a nicer guy, that he was a poor patsy and all this? Because he was not a great guy.
Whether he was nice or not, it's irrelevant to me. Yeah. He has nothing to do with this case.
Yeah, he's not germane to the case in any way.
Not at all.
Not at
all. Let me tell you something. These witnesses that Matthews uses, okay, the one with the white Cadillac that saw Otis putting Adam into a white Cadillac, his name is William Mitzler. I noticed he never mentioned William on there, his name. But his name, I don't use pseudonyms in my book. I have all the names,
Sure.
real names. And William Mitzler, this is his statement, okay, the first statement he gave. He saw 65-year-old Otis Toole talking to 12-year-old Adam.
65?
And Adam willingly got into his car.
Well, that's.
He was wearing white sneakers and... Excuse me?
I was gonna say that's funny. Just to say, 65. Otis died when he was 49. Just sorry, I'll let you go back to what you're saying, but that would be an odd statement. Okay, go ahead.
And I don't know how Matthews makes him a witness, because this guy's a pot-smoking, potty-mouthed idiot by his own admission in his statements. You know. But anyway, he says that he went to the Sears at 10 a.m. Okay? And then he went there to buy some camping gear because he was taking his family on a camping trip in the Everglades. And then he left, and then he came back because he wanted to pick up a couple things that he forgot at 3 p.m. So in Matthew's book, from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., how many hours is that? That's 5 hours, right?
That is 5 hours.
Adam was abducted at 12:20.
Yeah.
Now, in Matthew's book, Bringing Adam Home, Matthew says that William Mitzler went to the mall at 3 p.m., and a couple of hours earlier he was there as well. He doesn't mention the time because he knows he can't mention the time. But a couple of hours is way short of 5 hours. 5 hours is way more than a couple. He's trying to get the time as close to 12 without saying, even readers to believe that he was there at 12.
Yeah. Yeah.
When he wasn't. And this guy took 3 polygraph tests. He failed all 3 times. They tried to give him a psychology exam, and a psychiatrist says he was incapable of even talking to this guy.
Well, okay, now, what about the Mickey Mouse? What about the head that was found? I mean, we got to get into that a little bit because they have Adam's head, and they have allegedly a print matching Adam's face on the carpet in blood.
Right.
And
no. Let me tell you something about that car in the carpet, okay? First of all, let's talk about the carpet, that face that you see, that he claims he had his eureka moment and saw Adam Walsh. And if Bean would have got those photos, Detective Bean, he would have got all the credit. Well, first of all, did you go to my website and look? If you haven't, anybody that's listening can do this. Go to my website, frustratedwitness.com, and go to the junk evidence file. Mm-hmm. You'll see the original photo that Joe Matthews received from the FDLE, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and the one that he claims is Adam Walsh. Now, that photo looks nothing like the other photo. It's a 35mm negative, because they were never developed. So it's a 35mm negative. He had to flip that negative over, turn it around, and zoom in on a poster-sized part of that image before he had his eureka moment and claim that was Adam Walsh. According to his statement, he even told you that within seconds he looked at this photo and his eyes bugged out of his head because he was staring at Adam. It wasn't that. You look at that photo, if you turn that photo around enough times, you can find Elvis in there.
Well, yeah, it's pareidolia is what it is. We're seeing what we want to see, maybe. I mean, I'm not saying that's the case here, but that is exactly what could happen. Is you look hard enough, like you said, you can see Elvis again. Jokingly, you see Elvis. If you looked hard enough, you're right. It's a trick of the mind, trick of the eye. Yeah. But they find this. Okay, but we have DNA, though. Correct? We have to have DNA.
Yeah, we do have DNA, but it exonerates Otis Toole, the DNA. You know. Anyway, listen. That white Cadillac back in 1981, they didn't have DNA. Okay, but they had everything short of DNA. Okay? Mm-hmm. And it was just as good as evidence they have today. For instance, they found hair samples that they found in that white Cadillac from the dashboard, the floor, the center console, the trunk, dozens and dozens of hair samples. And they took hair samples from the severed head that was found. Not one of Adam's hairs were found to be in that Cadillac. Now, as far as that blood goes, you know, luminol is not admissible in court. Okay? Because it doesn't show blood. All it shows is the iron in the hemoglobin, the red blood cells. You know, in 1 part to 1,000,000 will show up as a glow, as a blue glow. Yeah. And so it's not admissible in court. That could have been anything. It could have been an animal sitting on the floor. It could have been metal parts being placed there. It could have been the floorboard lighting up under the carpet that would do that.
Now,
There's
Willis,
so many things. Matthews, as a seasoned homicide investigator, should know that.
now, did they test the blood on this floor to indeed
They
see?
tested everything. There was only droplets of blood in insufficient amounts to be tested any further. So how does he get so much that makes a facial image?
Good question.
I have all the reports.
Good question. Mia, I mean,
And that,
Mia, you...
and all that evidence they claim, like the Cadillac, that
Yeah.
Cadillac wasn't lost. After they thoroughly tested it and cut it all up, it was a junk car to start with. You know, a 10-year-old Cadillac that was never taken care of. They returned the Cadillac as required by standard procedure to Wells Brothers used car lot. And it was so messed up that they had to just junk it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the evidence, all the carpet samples and all that was returned to the Hollywood Police Department. It was the Jacksonville Homicide Department that advised the Jacksonville lab, the crime lab, to return it to Hollywood since it was all relevant to the Adam Walsh case. And so they kept it in their evidence files until I went to them in 1991 and showed them that composite from the Twin City Mall. And then all of a sudden, everything disappeared.
Really?
Yep.
So-
That's when the evidence was expunged. They say, you know, listen to the chief's own words when he closes the case. He says, it's true, evidence was lost. No, lost is another word for expunged.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting, though. You show up with your composite and your evidence, and then their evidence somehow goes missing. I mean,
I truly believe I'm the one that caused them that evidence to disappear. Because, I mean, I still remember the look on Jack Hoffman's face when I showed him that composite. And I said, look, this is the guy. He knew that was from the Twin City Mall, and he dismissed it.
And is that because it didn't fit the narrative of who they want to fit?
It didn't fit James Campbell. Right, exactly.
Okay, well...
He was so zeroed in on James
Well,
Campbell.
who was
He could be heard all the way
James?
down the hallway calling James Campbell, you know, a family dildo and you know, all kinds of names. I mean, he month after month, week after week, he was grilling James Campbell.
Well, who
until
was
John
James?
Walsh hired an attorney.
I guess we got to back up and say who James Campbell was and how he fits. Who was he?
Right. James Campbell was a friend of John Walsh who lived with John, and he was having an affair with Reve for a couple of years while John was out to work. And he proposed marriage to Reve, but Reve said she can't marry him because she had a son with John. So the detectives were thinking, motive. Get rid of the kid, you get the wife.
Well, that would be a motive. I mean...
It would be.
But he passed,
but they
though,
were so
right?
zeroed in on him, they couldn't get it off their hypotheses. You know, when other composites were matching all the Hollywood Mall, they couldn't get away from it.
I'm going to go to a limb and assume that he was cleared via polygraph.
He was cleared. Joe Matthews cleared him 3 times.
But they still were...
That's the one thing Joe Matthews did was right. It's probably the only thing he did that was right.
So they kept grilling this guy over and over and over, hoping his story would change. I don't understand. Once the polygraph cleared him, because that's exactly why they brought Matthews in, was to separate
because
the innocent
Joe Matthews
from the
himself
suspect.
admitted that he was bumping heads with the less experienced detective Hoffman, and that the detective Hoffman was the one that didn't want Joe Matthews to clear Campbell.
But then it took John Walsh to step in with an attorney, didn't it? Like you're saying, to stop
It
them
did.
from after
He
his
hired
friend.
John Varon, who was known as the Silver Fox.
How can John be so cool? And I shouldn't say so cool about this, but you would have thought he would have had an axe to grind with this guy because he's sleeping with his wife. Why would he care if they're grilling him?
Well, I'm that's personal.
You know what I mean? I'm just speaking.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, though. Yeah, you're right.
You know, I would have had an axe to grind. I wouldn't have cared. But then again, you know, maybe they were friends. Maybe there was some.
I feel differently myself. I mean, if I saw somebody doing that to my wife, you know, I wouldn't even get angry at him. You know. Yeah. I would just get more angry at my wife. You know, both of them. It takes 2 to tango. You know that.
No, yeah, absolutely. But you know, so they have the suspect they like, which is Campbell, and they're saying, hey, he's been doing it with the wife for how long? She couldn't marry him because Adam was in the picture. I get that. I get where they would go to that, where they'd leap to that almost right away. But once he was cleared to be a polygraph, that should have been it. Okay, all right, he's not our guy. Let's move on.
Cleared of composites, cleared of a lot of things. The descriptions that were given.
Yeah. Yeah, and well, the reason why I would think that they'd want that is because it would have been an easy case. Because,
you go after the easy prey, of course.
Yeah.
They do that all the time, just like I mentioned a couple of cases where they've done that. You know, people, not necessarily the Hollywood Police Department, but others, the Miramar Police Department pinned a murder on this guy. He spent like 25 years in prison, and then finally when they found out he was innocent with DNA, there were big lawsuits.
I was going to say,
lawsuits.
What happens, Willis?
So they shell out millions and millions of dollars of taxpayers' money.
Yeah. You're absolutely correct. They do. They do. There's lots of cases out there, if you go back and look, where people were exonerated because of DNA, and thank God it's here because it has freed almost as many people as it's convicted. Now, Mia, Willis calls you up out of the blue, right? I mean, you got a phone call one day. Hey, it's me, Willis Morgan. I was there at the mall. Take us through that first meeting with Willis. What that was like, and how shocking it must have been for you.
It was. Actually, he didn't call me directly. At first, he ended up locating my daughter, and she gave him my number. And, when he called, I was like, who is this? Because my number's, like, really private. And he explained who he was and what he was doing, that he'd been doing all this research, and he wanted me to look at some pictures. So I'm like, okay, sure. And he emailed me the pictures, and I chose the picture and sent him an email back saying, this is the person I saw right here. And he goes, now, before I tell you who this is, I want you to tell me everything you can remember. And, it's something that has always stuck with me. So I explained to him everything that I had seen and everything. And then a few days later, he called me and he goes, okay, are you ready to know who you chose? And he explained to me that it was Jeffrey Dahmer, his picture that I had chosen. And so that's how Willis and I, since then, and that was, I think, 2013 or 2014. And since then, we've, talked back and forth, and he's been able to, jog my memory on a few things just by asking specific questions. He directed me to check out Joe Matthews' book. And this was he told me to read the book before he would even tell me who I identified. So I, downloaded the book on the Kindle and started reading it. And I was like, wait a minute. And I had emailed him and told him, I said, this is not true. This man has never talked to me. And he goes, that's exactly what I thought. So
wow.
The name wrong.
Have you ever reached out to Joe Matthews to say, hey, this is inaccurate in your book?
No.
I filed a lawsuit against him.
Yeah, I know you have. I know you have. And according to what he said, you lost.
Yeah, he's right, with prejudice.
And
but
so
only because of political expediency. He hires this attorney his name is Tom Panza. Okay, let me tell you who Tom Panza is. Tom Panza is a lobbyist lawyer, attorney. He donates money to these judges, the ones he has to go and do cases before. Now, they have a law in Florida, okay? They have a cap on donations. It's $500 maximum that you're allowed to donate to a judge.
Yeah.
So what he does is what's called bundling. Bundling is when you take your $500 and you donate it many times over by using many different names. So his wife will donate her $500. His wife's business, Dottie's Delight, will donate $500. His 6-year-old daughter donates $500. His even younger 2-year-old son donates $500. Where does a 2-year-old kid get $500 to donate to an attorney?
Good point.
To a judge. So anyways, he goes before these judges, and you can't, they say you can't fight City Hall. You can't sue them.
Well,
because
true.
An average citizen's just not going to get justice, in our court system, because we don't have a court system, a justice system here in South Florida. We only have a system.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, is it got kind of lumped into the political part of it, and then, of course,
right.
the money being...
Let me explain to you about the lawsuit. The lawsuit, it was because Matthews wrote this report that he claims proves it was out of school. Then he bamboozles the Hollywood Police Department using John Walsh's name to close the case, which they do. Now, the police department, they also sued them, the Hollywood Police Department. All these cops, including Joe Matthews, lied through their teeth, under oath, in court. They lie in court. They don't tell the truth. Joe, the police chief, if you listen to him close the case, depending on which which show you're watching, I think it's NBC or one of them, because there's like 30 cameras in that room. One of them actually pans over to Joe, and you see him gloating in the corner, sitting down there, because the chief is giving him accolades about, how he solved the case. And then when I filed a lawsuit, all of a sudden, this was nothing more than a regurgitation of everything the chief already knew, so he didn't keep a copy because they refused to give me one. Mm-hmm. So that's why I filed the lawsuit. But according to Florida Sunshine Law, it's very, very clear. The law states that anything you receive, irregardless of your opinion of it, has to become part of the case file.
Yeah.
The judge sides with the police chief, even in court. She tells my lawyer, because I'm not allowed to speak up. In fact, one time I tried to speak up at the end of the hearing, and the judge tells me, shut up and sit down. Like that to me, with total disdain.
Man.
And, yeah. And she said to my attorney, says, but the chief said he didn't use it. That's totally irrelevant whether he used it or not. Yeah. He accepted it. Not only did he accept it, but let me tell you what he did. He writes a letter attached to this report, sends it to the state attorney's office. The state attorney reads it and agrees with it, sends a letter back to the Hollywood Police Department telling them what a great report that is, proving that it was out of school. Now, these moronic cops didn't realize these implicating letters were going to incriminate them. They put them in the Hollywood case file. They put those letters. So I used the letter from the chief as Exhibit A and the letter from the state attorney's office saying what great report that was. They read it and they agreed with it. Now all of a sudden when I filed a lawsuit, it was nothing. It was meaningless. So they didn't save it, and the court agrees with them.
Well, was Otis Toole, now, from what I understand, I can't find anything here, but he was never brought to trial on this, was he?
No, because it was dismissed. He couldn't get anything right. Listen, his first statement was that Adam was in the parking lot jumping around on the cars, and he snatched him and threw him into the Cadillac, and him and Henry Lee Lucas is the one that killed him, and then he got on A1A along the ocean and drove south. I mean, he couldn't get anything right, Mm-hmm. Only after the fourth interview did he start getting anything right, because they kept, giving him suggestive questions and stuff, and showing him pictures of the crime scenes. And even and his answer when he would get things wrong was because he was intoxicated. And even Hoffman said to him after about the fourth interview, said, Otis, are you sure you were intoxicated? Because you seem to be getting all the answers right now. After they fed him the answers, listen, as far as finding where the severed head was, he led them to that bridge. He didn't lead them there. They pulled off to the swale area and started driving 10 miles an hour, and they asked him, do you see the bridge? Anybody can do that and see a bridge.
Yeah, you're right, because I'm looking.
He goes, yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah,
they pulled off the road. Not only did they pull off the road, they passed it up and back up to it.
Yeah.
And asked them. That's how he led them to it. I mean, this guy's so phony, it's pathetic.
It still doesn't say.
These reports. He says he's the only one that read the 10,000 pages of the Adam Walsh case files. Well, first of all, there aren't even 10,000 pages. There's only about 7, because I think 3,000 pages were expunged. And I read them too, and I came to totally different conclusions. Matthews is either a fraud or he's stupid.
Wow, strong words, my friend. But, I'm looking at this about Otis Toole, and there is nothing at all about a trial. You would have thought he didn't die until 1996, ample time to bring the man to trial. Doesn't even seem that like they attempted to bring him to trial.
Well, listen, in 1995, there was another lawsuit. Jay Greenland, who was a reporter for the Mobile Press Register, he filed a lawsuit against him to have the case files released. Okay? Now, Detective Smith in the Hollywood Police Department, who took over after they kicked Hoffman off the case, they put this guy that was supposed to be a hotshot cold case detective. Actually, he was more of a hotshot cover-up specialist. And they put him in charge of the case. And when he went to court, he lied to the judge back then. Mm-hmm. Because when he first took over, he wrote a memo saying it would be nearly impossible to find suspects at this point in time. But then as soon as the lawsuit was filed, all of a sudden he found suspects. And he used John Walsh to side with the police department and try not to get the case files released, telling them that they have suspects on the horizon, they're about to make an arrest, and that would releasing the files would impede on their investigation. But that was all made up. They never had any suspects.
Would there be?
He lied to the judge.
Okay. Now there's a question now even about whether or not Adams Walsh's head was indeed his head.
Yeah, I know. That's a crackpot guy that.
I'm just going to jump down this rabbit hole for a minute, and the reason why it was brought up is because the picture is presented of Adam, the popular picture, the baseball picture, shows him clearly without his front teeth. The head that they found has two of them, two buck teeth. They're clearly shown. Boy, I just have a hard time believing that they'd fumble that one. That's obviously has to be Adam's head. I mean, I can't understand why they get that one wrong.
No, they didn't. They got it right. The problem is this. Do you know how tricky photos can be sometimes? If you have a small fish, you hold it out in front of you, it looks 3 times bigger.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
The same thing with that. I don't know how that happened, how there's with the teeth, but I'll tell you what I do know. I went to the Hollywood Police Department, requesting to see the case files, okay? They took me into a room where they had all 7 boxes of records on a table waiting for me. And one box was a photo box. It had all these photos in there. So I saw the photos of Adam's severed head. I had a hard time when I first started looking at him.
I would imagine.
I got used to it. I knew it was something I had to do. So I did. I looked at the photos when the severed head when it was recovered. I mean, it looked like a grapefruit. This guy was holding it with gloves on, white gloves. But then I also saw the photos after they took it to the lab, examined it, and cleaned it up and took more photos after they washed the hair, blow dried it, and whatever they did, reset the jaw. Believe me when I tell you, that's Adam. It looks exactly like with his eyes closed. I don't need DNA to tell me that's not Adam or that's Adam.
Well, didn't they do DNA and they used a crushed tooth and they did indeed find?
Did. That was years later, in the 90s, I believe. Yeah. But Ray Walsh willingly submitted a cheek swab.
Yeah.
And they compared that to a mandible, a molar from the mandible of Adam, of the severed head, and it was a perfect match as a maternal match.
So that removes all doubt.
Question.
Yeah, that removes all doubt.
The guy you're talking about refutes the DNA. Say DNA is not always right. I mean, come on.
Well, there was some claim that was overturned on further examination. The DNA.
I don't know about any of that. All I know is that's Adam. I saw the photos.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, if you're saying it's Adam, I believe you. Absolutely. I mean, how would you not get that one right? And because it's such a traumatic moment, I couldn't imagine looking at these photos. Ugh, gruesome.
See, if you know the story about this Prozac kid, this kid is probably falling on his stomach with stomach cramps when he made the tabloids. That's why tabloids have no credibility. They put these stupid stories.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. I agree with you 110% that there has been a lot of
They get away with it.
Years
ago, they used to have some lawsuits, a lot of big lawsuits. So now what they do is they just put a story at the very bottom. If you ever notice at the very bottom of some of those more horrific stories, they put, and so says Joe Schmo from Boise, Idaho.
Yes.
So that makes them able to print anything they want because they're only reporting what somebody else said.
Exactly, because the views and opinions of themselves are not being reflected in that article by doing that.
Right.
So that's normal journalistic tactics right there. Most newspapers and anything really, whenever they can, especially even me on a radio show, we use that line and all the views and opinions.
I don't need to.
Well, I know you don't need to, but the rest of us do, because you have some pretty damning evidence that it was Dahmer that did this, and everything's fitting. The more you're talking, the more the puzzle pieces are coming to my head, going, "Wait a minute, everything is fitting here."
Yeah. And listen, I told you Joe Matthews was a senior lead investigator for America's Most Wanted. Okay, when Lionel's, when the meter room was found, okay, this made national news, okay? It was only in the news for a few days, but it was in the news. And John Walsh was infuriated because that's when Bill Bowen was in the news, I was in the news. We were interviewed by Colleen Henry from Channel 12 in Milwaukee. Mm-hmm. I forget their call name. letters. But anyway, it was Colleen Henry came all the way from Milwaukee, which is like almost 1,300 miles, to interview us at the Hollywood Mall, nevertheless, when the Hollywood Police Department refused to even walk across the street to interview us.
Yeah.
She came down here, so this made national news. And in Joe's book, this is what Joe said, because the first day when it came out, John Walsh was on TV. He was furious, shaking his finger in the camera and saying, "There's witnesses that would never listen to," and demanded that we be interviewed. The next day, America's Most Wanted puts out this statement. There's no credibility to anything that's being said about this meter room, and America's Most Wanted investigated it. Well, guess who's the senior lead investigator at America's Most Wanted?
Yeah, I hear
John Walsh's best friend and colleague.
So he had every reason not to pursue it any further. So, we got to kind of get in the gruesome area here, and I always hate doing this on these shows, but unfortunately we have to. Okay, Dahmer has him in the car. What does Dahmer do to this poor kid?
Oh, that's up to your imagination. He took him back to the meter room. They say, I'm not a criminologist or anything, but I've always read that when a child gets abducted by an abductor, they take him back to someplace they're familiar with.
Yeah.
Where would he be familiar with? Where he works, that meter room. And so, anyway, when I saw that police report with Dahmer as a witness, I even talked to the police officer that made that report out. He was flabbergasted that Dahmer had his name on it with his handwriting, because he didn't know who Dahmer was at the time. Dahmer was a witness in this police report. But he remembered the incident because he remembered the dead guy, because he was only 16 inches high.
But a lot of people turn around and say, "Hey, Willis, come on. That's not even Dahmer's target. He was after young, 20-something black men
I'll get to that.
In Milwaukee."
But anyway, I just wanted to say that was an old cop joke, that 16 inches high. The guy was in the prone position, and he was in full rigor mortis and covered with ants. And that's why he remembered him, okay? Mm-hmm. So anyway, when I went to that meter room, I knew right away that had to be where he brought Adam. And so I went to the same guy that you're talking about with the Prozac kid, and he's a freelance writer, and I was telling him about this, and his argument was that, I'm way off. He says, don't even say nothing about it. He says, you don't know what you're talking about. And so I take some pictures, and I bring some pictures back to him and show him. I said, look, I'm certain this has to be. So he went and called ABC Primetime. They flew down here from New York. Chris Cuomo was the narrator. And he came down here and went into that meter room with one of the best CSI experts in the state of Florida, certainly, and even in the country, because her name is Jan Johnson. She's even known in Europe, because when I was calling Germany, some detectives in Germany, they were telling me about Jan Johnson. So everybody knows her. So that's how well known she is. But anyway, she did this luminol lighting in the back, and there's this blood spatter that you can go on my website. I don't know if you had a chance to look at the blood spatter, but she describes it as being a high-velocity blood spatter pattern that's indicative of a homicide. Okay, now, when this was brought up to the Hollywood Police Department, they said, but that could have been two pit bulls that got in there and had a fight. The Miami-Dade Police Department told me, Chuck McCulley, their lead homicide investigator over there, told me, well, we think a bird flew into the wall.
Wow.
They're in full cover-up mode. They do not want to make the connection. Bottom line is this, Joel, if there's blood spatter that's being described as being indicative of a homicide, somebody died in there, and it wasn't the dead guy because he didn't have any blood on him, or they wouldn't have believed Dahmer when that it was a natural death.
Well, I was going to ask, did they at least test the blood to verify it was human?
They did nothing. I went in there and took some samples out and tested it. I spent hundreds, literally hundreds of thousands of my own money sending this out to get nuclear mitochondrial DNA testing done, and I sent it to a company in Orchard Cellmark in Dallas, Texas. But they came back with a negative on everything, and my thinking is, they do a lot of work for police departments. Maybe they just don't want to make a connection. So then I got all the stuff back, plus I went and got more samples.
Sure.
And I went here in Florida to another lab.
Yeah.
Called DNA Labs International. And I went there, and this time I made up a different scenario. I didn't put Adam's name in there. I made a different location, everything. And so when the doctor told me that they couldn't get anything, I believed her. She was honest. But you know what the funny thing is? When I walked into the lobby there, they had plaques everywhere, all over the walls from different police departments. You know,
well, that
so
could be an indicator.
They do a lot of work for police departments.
You could have been in hostile territory, and they had every reason probably not to play ball because that's their bread and butter is the police departments.
Yeah,
but
exactly. Exactly. I understand that too. But the point is that I believed her when she told me she couldn't get it because number one, this is a mortared wall. I don't know if you ever worked with lime or cement, but it'll eat the skin off your hand if you keep your hands in it too long.
Sure, that's true. I've worked with cement, and it'll eat your skin right off.
So between the lime and the mortared wall, between the humidity in Florida and the time, this was like 28 years later, and there was no way they were going to get DNA out of it.
Well,
but you know what else I found? I found there was a trap door. You go into a crawl space under that trap door, there's a blanket spread out, little wads of duct tape, and some garbage bags, black garbage bags. So your imagination can just, run as wild as mine of what that's all about.
Well, if you read Otis Toole's deposition of what he did, it's quite graphic. Very graphic of what he did.
Yeah. You know why?
Why?
They were feeding him all kinds of tranquilizers. That make you want to talk stupid. That's how they do it. In the old days, they used to torture confessions out of people. Now they just give you medication.
Let that do the work for them. Gotcha. That's not the first time I've heard that before, by the way.
Well, Otis Toole himself said it, and so did Henry Lee Lucas. They asked him why he was confessing at a time when he recanted. They asked him. He said, because they were giving me tranquilizers, and I was feeling pretty high, and then they were giving me steak subs and then KFC. This is why on your show, Detective Matthews, and
exactly.
I know Dr. Cole thought it was kind of humorous when he said he was going to bring up a 3-piece KFC dinner with him to Otis Toole. He'll confess to anything.
Yes.
It's true.
Yeah.
People like you and me, we don't realize how those things are missed because food in prison is very bland. They don't have a reason or a desire to make it,
well, no,
good.
They don't want
it's
you
not
to.
A restaurant.
Yeah, it's not Club Med. They want you to supper, and that's the only reason why you're there.
That's why you get a craving for a slice of pepperoni pizza or KFC or McDonald's.
Sure, absolutely. But getting back
to a field trip.
Yeah, and a field trip. But getting back to Dahmer, though, there's a lot of people that have said, well, again, like I alluded to earlier, that wasn't Dahmer's MO. In fact, they asked Dahmer, he said, I had nothing to do with that. I don't know what you're talking about.
No, Dahmer didn't say that. Dahmer didn't say that. Guess who said that?
Who said that?
You read those statements. That's his attorney writing that stuff. Joe Boyle,
Okay, so that was not Dahmer.
Attorneys do that. You ever see when somebody has a defense and all of a sudden, as soon as they lawyer up, the defense completely goes reverse cycle,
Sure.
Completely changes?
Sure. I know exactly what you're saying. But, a lot of people say...
It happened when Dahmer molested those kids. He was masturbating in front of a bunch of kids, and then he admitted that he was masturbating. Then all of a sudden, when he got a lawyer, he was urinating and just shaking himself off.
That is true. I did read those files as well. That things did change when it got to trial, where his attorney was a little shrewd enough to get that defense going that he was urinating and did not realize that people were watching.
Yeah. And he did the same thing in Germany.
Yeah, well, that's another thing. There was a lot of people killed in Germany that they cannot come for when Dahmer was there. And in fact, I do believe 1 or 2 people were killed right in the barracks, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I wouldn't listen to that too much.
Okay. Well, you hear a lot of... After Dahmer was caught, of course, it's been many years now since he's been caught. He was caught.
That's the same guy, I think, that started that rumor.
And so there's a lot
same guy with the Prozac kid.
Okay, yeah, there's a lot of misinformation about Dahmer, making him more of a famous individual post-death with a lot of his crimes he probably did not commit. But this one, though, now the people turn around and say, but Willis, we get it. We understand what you saw, and we're sympathetic to it, and I'm sure you know what you think you saw. But Dahmer, that's not his MO. That's not his prey. Right. What do you say to those people when they say that to you?
I'd say they're right.
I'd
say they're right. It wasn't his MO in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Because he was in a black neighborhood, so you can have black victims. In Germany, he had female. In Miami, mostly young kids.
So, would you say he's a chameleon?
He lived Excuse me?
Was he a bit of a criminal chameleon, though? He would act whatever was
I think
available
a
to him?
lot of serial killers can be a chameleon. I think so. You know, it depends as your MO changes. You know, look at DC. You know, how many times they've written that book over and over and over again on MOs. You know, when Bundy was captured, they had to rewrite the book. The DC snipers. You remember that? You remember
I do.
Searching every white van they could find. There was no white van. They said it was two white rednecks or a white redneck.
Yes.
They were saying it was most likely a white redneck with military background. No, it turned out to be two Jamaicans, one mentor and one in training.
Yes, that's true. That did, and that was a big mass hysteria when that did happen. The DC sniper was active, and it was
maybe
all
they should
over
rewrite
the
the
news.
book again.
Well, you know what? They could do that as well, and you know the thing of it is we need that thing that links Dahmer. We need that definitive nail that puts him there, puts him with Adam. Do you believe that is there any kind of DNA on the remains, do you think, of Adam? That maybe they should retest it for Dahmer's DNA?
Well, I'm sure they have DNA on record. I don't know, you know, whether they can. The severed head was returned back to John Walsh in 2007.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right after the meter room was found, all of a sudden John Walsh had the severed head returned to him. But anyway, as far as MOs go.
And John Walsh, though, he himself goes with the narrative that Otis Toole did this.
Yeah. You remember why? Who did he have right in his midst for years, feeding him this false information, this false made-up narrative?
Yeah.
You know?
So it's a massive cover-up is what it really is, and it's a massive cover-up not wanting to admit police incompetence.
Yeah, let me tell you, the FBI agent, Bill Haggerty, is the one that interviewed Otis Toole, okay? Because Otis Toole was claiming to cross state lines, so naturally the FBI got involved. And they also interviewed him, and Bill Haggerty says, no, had nothing to do with Adam, okay? Now, the FBI agent, Neil Patel, that interrogated Jeffrey Dahmer, says he believes Dahmer gave him as close to a confession as you can get when Dahmer said to him, he says, you know, Neil, anybody that confesses to Adam won't live a day in prison.
Yeah. Yeah, that
so
is true.
Dahmer gave him a confession, and Dahmer is guilty.
So what's your plan moving forward, Willis? What are you gonna do with all this moving forward?
Oh, 2018, they're gonna be in for a surprise.
Are you gonna try to convene a grand jury and not leave it up to a judge?
Yes, you're smart. That's exactly what I'm gonna do. I want this to get away from the judges and get away from political expediency. I think a jury has a much better chance of coming up with the correct decisions.
Mm-hmm. And what would you like to see the complete outcome being?
I want to see Dahmer indicted posthumously for Adam Walsh's abduction and murder.
And then, of course, Otis Toole cleared the charges.
Forget about Otis Toole. Listen, Joe.
Yeah.
Circumstantial evidence is as good as hard evidence when you have enough of it. If you ever get a chance to read my book, I know I have some of it in the website. Anybody can go there and look at it. There's more than enough witnesses, different sites, and more than enough circumstantial evidence that would convict anybody had a good prosecutor wanted to do it, even a not-so-good prosecutor.
Well,
convict them.
I know Mia's been hanging on the line with us so long, and thanks again, Mia, for hanging out and discussing this with us. But are you willing to testify in court what you saw?
Oh, absolutely. I think the truth needs to be known. I agree with Willis that the police should be outed for their botched investigation and them claiming that one person did it and dismissing all the witnesses. That I've not known of any individual witness who can say that they saw Otis Toole, except for Joe Matthew claiming that these people saw Otis Toole, like he claimed that I saw Otis Toole.
Yeah.
I never saw Otis Toole.
Yeah, and that is something in the book, and I'm glad that you guys pointed that out, because I would have gone right over that, and not challenged the book, and I generally challenge guests when they are on, as you know, and had I been armed with that information, I might have challenged a little harder that statement that you pointed the finger at Otis Toole.
Right, and that's why Joe is not here today. Did you tell him Mia was also going to be here?
I did reach out to Joe. And
he doesn't want to face Mia. Believe me, they tried to. Mia can tell you. They tried to contact her on a Facebook page. Was it Mia? Was it your Facebook page? They tried to contact her and get her to sway her to change her statements?
Are you guys...
Yeah,
go ahead. Sorry about that.
Somebody contacted me. It wasn't... it seemed like they were covering who they were. There was no picture, and it was somebody that called themselves Jared Willis. I actually still have the messages. And they're like, oh, you didn't see that. How can you remember? And you know that this is who it really was. Why are you going, even mentioning anything now? And I'm like, because this Joe Matthews lied in his book. That's the only reason that I'm even on your show tonight, is to say Joe Matthews is a liar. Period.
Well,
he's never talked to me, and he's misquoted my brother in his book, and my brother's not alive to even speak up and say, hey, you know what? This man's a liar. So I'm speaking up for my brother.
And I'm glad you are. I'm glad you are, because your brother Joel, it sounded like he was very tormented by this. And again, my deepest condolences that he's no longer with us, because he would have been nice to talk with him one-on-one, but he would have been here. And he would have been, I'm sure he was such a wonderful and valuable person to have, but wonderful and valuable in this situation as well. So it's too bad he is not, and I know that he is resting well with the Lord. But that being said, I do believe that, you have a duty to your brother's memory to be sure that justice is served correctly.
And I feel that too. And I don't know if you've seen the picture of my brother on Willis's website, but if you look at his picture and then look at Adam's picture, they looked a lot alike.
Yeah, I saw that. I did look at that. They look very much alike. They really do. And it just really, it was just a stroke of luck that it wasn't your brother. I think by the way you talk about it, and by the way the body language, the posturing were going, and of course you, Willis, he was in predatory mode, and he was looking to take somebody. And I didn't think, if I was a betting man, it really didn't matter who, as long as it's someone that fit his profile, that he wanted to abduct.
And let me say, some of those attempted abductions were like the one before Adam, 2 weeks before, Twin City Mall. There were also some after Adam. So even after Adam, he wasn't satisfied. August 17th, he tried an abduction in South Beach. On Pennsylvania Avenue, he tried to get a kid that was 10 years old that managed to get away.
Yeah, and no one pointed the finger at Dahmer at that case either. I mean, that seems strange.
They didn't point the finger at Dahmer. They described him in the vehicle. They didn't know who Dahmer was.
Interesting. So you have more than one case. You have more than one case dealing with a blue van, and that didn't raise
many
bells and whistles didn't go up. That seems very strange, very suspect to me. Very strange.
But see, keep in mind that the police departments were far apart too, and they didn't all compare notes. There's Miami Beach,
right?
There's the Hollywood,
sure,
Margate, all the different little areas, Riviera Beach, all the different areas. Those police departments weren't comparing notes.
Well, that's not uncommon though. Police departments generally don't, and that's been part of the pitfall of law enforcement, is they don't really share notes with each other as much as you think they would. I don't know why they don't, but that's very correct. They do not really share notes too much. In fact, the FBI has tried to release a database for years to get police departments to basically pool all their evidence together so they could solve these cases, but nobody will do it.
In this case, they actually did, though. These other departments in South Beach, Plantation, the reason I know about these cases, because they actually called the Hollywood Police Department, the police chiefs from these other locations, says they think their incident is related because everything is matching. And they were dismissed. The police chiefs as well were dismissed because they were in full mode of getting James Campbell. But let me say something. Remember Mia was saying about she believes Jared Willis tried to call her. They use pseudonyms. Okay, now.
Yeah.
That's what they're down to. Using pseudonyms on Facebook. I had to block them. Other sites had to block them because they keep changing their names and pseudonyms. But if you go to my website, I cut and pasted from Amazon a 1-star and a 2-star review. The 1-star review is called, "This is a junk of a book," referring to my book. And that's Jared Willis. There's another one that's called, "This book is a domino theory to nowhere." And those are just the headlines. The headlines are mild compared to with the text of the review. You know, that's these guys trying to disrupt justice for Adam because they're trying to protect their narrative of bringing Adam home.
Okay, now let's just say, Willis, let's just say for argument's sake, you get grand jury and they reopen the case and it's found out that there was a full-blown police cover-up. Is there a legal implications that they could be facing criminally for doing that, for covering that up and tampering with evidence?
Well, I doubt it. You know, I don't know. I don't even want to try to go for that. I mean, that would be nice, but I just want justice for Adam, basically, and I want these cops to realize that they can't keep doing what they're doing and pinning murders on innocent people. Mm-hmm. You know, that's it.
But you know, there's been a whole movement now.
The thing is, listen, Joe, I don't mean to interrupt you, but they knew when they closed that case that it wasn't Otis Toole. They knew it wasn't Otis Toole. Because I went to, when this police chief, you know, Chadwick Wagner, when he took over, which was about a year before they closed the case, he took over in 2007. The case was closed in 2008. Okay, yeah. The reason he took over as police chief is because the chief before him, Jim Scarberry, had to resign because there was an FBI sting operation on that Hollywood Police Department because they were given police escorts in regular police cars in uniform to the mafia, escorting truckloads of drugs, coke, from the Port Everglades to warehouse destinations, giving them police escorts. So the FBI infiltrated them with an undercover agent. And what happened was the police chief leaked to his underlings that the FBI was onto them, and so they had to call the operation off because they were afraid of the safety of their undercover agent. Otherwise, there would have been a lot more than 4 that were netted, tried, and convicted and given long prison terms, up to 16 years.
Well, you know, Willis and Mia, that brings up another point then. I mean, aren't you afraid for your own safeties? That
no,
this is true?
I don't care.
I mean, aren't you afraid of reprisal?
I'm 71. I don't care. But the point is, when this police chief took over, I wrote him a letter telling him I'd like to meet with him. Uh-huh. He was ignoring me. He would never answer. Then I was leaving emails. I was leaving messages on the answer machine and calling there and leaving messages with whoever answered the phone. And then they would ignore me. So I went to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. I went to the City Hall Complaints Department, filed complaints. I wrote to the governor, Charlie Christie, in Florida here, and they kept ignoring me. But what was happening, all these other departments and places were calling the Hollywood Police Department to ask them what's going on.
Yeah.
So finally they call me back and they go, okay, we're going to give you that interview now. So I go in there. Of course, I let people know that where I was going to be because, you know, I don't trust these people. I mean, and I met the police chief. He shook hands with me, but it wasn't a sincere handshake, you know,
sure.
By lack of eye contact and all. I could tell this was going to be a fake interview. And I asked him, I said, I hope this is going to be an amicable interview. And he goes, these nice, like he's talking to a 5th grade. He goes to me, he goes, these nice detectives are going to listen to everything you have to say, and they're going to take notes. He goes like that to me.
Wow.
But they weren't nice. Loud Bean jumps up, flailing his arms around, and says to me, you just admitted you were there. For all we know, you could have done it. Get up. I'm going to put you under arrest. How would you like that? And then he backs up a few steps, folds his arm like a tough guy, and he goes to me with a smirk on his face. He says, so, you think you want to come back here again?
Wow, that's a veiled
threat.
So
this is what they do to witnesses.
Yeah. And
that's... They call witnesses unreliable. They've even spat on witnesses, if you can believe that. And I can tell you that story in The Witness, too.
Wow. That's absolutely insane.
Boy that was playing a video game with Adam. His name is Vernon Jones, okay?
Okay.
He was visiting his grandparents in Hallandale, which is the next town from Hollywood. And his grandfather was in the lawn business, so he goes to the tool department, which is right next door to the toy department. He buys tools. Vernon, at 9 years old, wasn't interested in tools, so he stayed back in the toy department playing with Adam, a video game. And there was this guy standing 20 feet, 10, 15 feet, whatever it was, from him, hissing at him, going, psst, psst, hey, you, psst, like that.
Wow.
Vernon looks at this guy, and then all of a sudden he hears this big crack. It's Adam. He got a grand slam home run, and Vernon turns around and looks at Adam. Adam's standing there with this big grin on his face because he's 6 years old and he just beat this older kid, 9 years old.
Yeah.
But Vernon didn't like it too much, so he went around the other side, started playing Donkey Kong by himself, leaving Adam standing there with this guy over him.
Wow, that's something else, Willis. Unfortunately, we're almost out of time. Mia, Willis, I'd like to
Okay,
thank
let me
both of
finish
you.
the story real quick, though.
Sure.
The next day, it was on the news about the abduction. The grandparents said, Vernon, get in here. And he went to the living room and he said, you're in the toy department. Did you see this kid? And he goes, Grandpa, that's a boy I was playing the video games with. So he took him to the police department, right?
Yeah.
And there was this big, fat, heavy-set police officer standing at the entrance. And he went over to inquire about the case. And the police officer turned to him and spat a wad of tobacco on his grandfather's shoe. And Vernon says that's the first time he ever experienced racism because the cop said, boy, I ain't got time for you.
Wow.
So the grandfather took Vernon by the hand and left. And they wouldn't hear from Vernon again for 20 years when Vernon wrote John Walsh the most heartfelt letter you ever could read, you know? And that's when Vernon's name became part of the case files because John Walsh sent it to the Hollywood Police Department, told him to call this guy. Today, to this day, they've never called him.
Wow. Man, okay. Willis, where can they get the book? Barnes & Noble, Amazon, everywhere else?
Barnes & Noble, Amazon, anywhere. But my new book will be coming out, too. I got the second edition coming out in a few more months.
Well, Mia, Willis, thank you both for coming on the show and talking about this with us. Everyone, buy the book. Take a peek at it. I think you will be surprised at how many of these puzzle pieces come together. But until next time, take care of each other, love each other, and see you guys tomorrow night.
Can I do my website real quick? Investigative.com.
We'll have that included, guys. We'll make sure to put all the websites into the articles, so you're not going to miss a thing. But again, take care of each other, love each other. Willis, Mia, again, thank you so much.
You've reached the Holiday Helpline. We turn the holidays into holidays.
Help, my family's decked the halls with boughs of holly, but our cozy clothes aren't very jolly.
Just go to Old Navy.
Old Navy?
Yep, the entire store's up to 60% off, plus all sleepwear and all sweaters are on sale.
Up to 60% off the entire store? Fa la la.
Sleepwear starts at just $7 for adults, $8 for kids, with sweaters from $10 for adults, $8 for kids at Old Navy and OldNavy.com.
'Tis the season to go to Old Navy.
Turn your holiday into a holiday. Get to Old Navy today. Valid 12/13 to 12/19. Excludes in-store clearance gift cards, register lane items, jewelry today only, and 2-day only deals.
Do you suffer from chronic CFED or can't focus energy drain? Try over-the-counter Vibrant. One tablet contains the same caffeine as a cup of coffee, but without the calories or coffee breath. Vibrant. Caffeine, not coffee. Taking Vibrant may result in increased productivity and decreased dread in setting alarms. Unexpected enjoyment of the graveyard shift has been associated with Vibrant. Vibrant may be a better budget option than drinking coffee. It may also decrease the urge to doze off, skip work, or exhibit signs of slacking. All jokes aside, always read the label, take only as directed, and limit caffeine as it may cause real side effects. Not for children under age 12.